Have you ever noticed that the moment you wake up, sometimes before you even open your eyes, anxiety is already there waiting for you? It's like an uninvited guest that moved into your mind without asking permission, and no matter how many times you try to push it away, it keeps coming back stronger, louder, more persistent. You might be sitting in a quiet room, everything around you perfectly calm, but inside your head there's a storm raging, thoughts spiraling out of control, telling you that something terrible is going to happen, that you're not good enough, that you're going to fail, that everyone can see through you and knows you're a fraud. And here's the really insidious part. These thoughts feel so real, so true, so much like they're coming from the deepest, most authentic part of who you are, that you believe them without question. But what if I told you that everything you think you know about your thoughts is wrong? What if the very thing that's been causing you so much suffering, this constant mental chatter that feels like it defines you, is actually not you at all? What if you've been living your entire life mistaking the voice in your head for your identity, when in reality you are something far greater, far more expansive, far more peaceful than that anxious narrator could ever be? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you has the power to completely transform your relationship with anxiety, and in doing so, transform your entire life. Let's start with a simple observation that most people never stop to consider. Right now, as you're watching this video, there's a voice in your head. Maybe it's commenting on what I'm saying. Maybe it's agreeing or disagreeing. Maybe it's thinking about what you need to do later today, or replaying something embarrassing that happened last week, or rehearsing a conversation you might have tomorrow. This voice is constant, relentless, always talking, always narrating, always judging, always planning, always worrying. For most people, this voice is so omnipresent that they never question it. They assume that this voice is them, that this is what it means to be a conscious human being, that this internal dialogue is the essence of their identity. But here's the crucial insight that changes everything. If you can hear the voice, if you can observe the thoughts, if you can notice the anxiety, then you cannot be those things. Think about it. When you watch a movie, you are not the movie. You are the one watching. When you listen to music, you are not the music, you are the listener. In the exact same way, when you observe your thoughts, you are not your thoughts. You are the observer. This might seem like a subtle distinction, even a semantic one, but I promise you, it's the difference between a life dominated by anxiety and a life of profound inner peace. The problem is that we've been conditioned since childhood to identify completely with our thinking mind. Our entire educational system, our culture, our language itself, reinforces this identification. We say, I am anxious, rather than I am experiencing anxiety. We say, I am depressed, rather than depression is present. We say, I think, therefore I am, when perhaps it would be more accurate to say I am aware of thinking, therefore I am something beyond thought. This complete identification with the thinking mind is what creates the prison of anxiety. When you believe you are your thoughts, then every anxious thought becomes a statement of absolute truth about reality and about yourself. When your mind tells you something bad is going to happen, you don't question it, you start preparing for disaster. When your mind tells you everyone thinks you're stupid, you don't investigate whether that's actually true, you just accept it as fact and feel terrible. When your mind tells you you're going to have a panic attack, you tense up and inadvertently create the very conditions that make panic more likely. The thoughts have complete power over you because you've given them the authority of your identity. But anxiety isn't just thought, it's also sensation. This is something that people often overlook when they're trying to understand their anxiety. They focus entirely on the mental component, the worried thoughts, the catastrophic predictions, the rumination, and they forget that anxiety is fundamentally a physical experience. Your heart races, your chest tightens, your stomach churns, your hands shake, your breathing becomes shallow. You feel heat in your face, tension in your shoulders, a knot in your throat. These physical sensations are often what make anxiety so unbearable. And here's what happens. You feel these sensations, and immediately your thinking mind creates a story about them. Oh no, my heart is racing. Something must be wrong. Maybe I'm having a heart attack. I need to get out of here. I can't handle this. What if I pass out? What if I lose control? What if this never stops? The sensations trigger thoughts. and the thoughts intensify the sensations, creating a feedback loop that spirals out of control. But here's the revolutionary insight. If you are not your thoughts, then you are also not your sensations. You are the awareness that notices both the thoughts and the sensations. You are the space in which the entire experience of anxiety unfolds, but you are not the experience itself. Let me give you a metaphor that might help make this clearer. Imagine that your awareness, your true self, is like the sky. Vast, spacious, unchanging, always there. The sky doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't become less sky-like. It's always present, always open, always accepting of whatever passes through it. Now, thoughts and emotions and physical sensations are like weather in the sky. Sometimes there are beautiful sunny days with fluffy white clouds. Sometimes there are gentle rains. Sometimes there are violent storms with thunder and lightning and torrential downpours. But here's the thing. No matter how intense the storm gets, it never damages the sky. The sky remains untouched, unharmed, completely at peace. The storm passes through the sky, but the sky is not the storm. In the same way, anxiety passes through your awareness, but you are not the anxiety. You are the vast, spacious, peaceful awareness that can hold anxiety without being destroyed by it, without being defined by it, without needing to fight against it or run away from it. This realization, this shift in perspective from being the storm to being the sky, is what I call the escape from anxiety. Notice I didn't say the cure for anxiety or the elimination of anxiety. That's because this isn't about making anxiety disappear forever. It's about changing your relationship to it so completely that it no longer has power over your life. When you realize you are not your anxious thoughts, something miraculous happens. The thoughts can still arise, but they don't hook you in the same way. When you realize you are not your anxious sensations, those physical feelings can still be present, but they don't trigger the same panic response. You stop being in a war with your own inner experience. You stop trying to control, suppress, avoid, or eliminate anxiety. Instead, you learn to allow it, to give it space, to let it be present without making it mean something terrible about you or your life. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This sounds great in theory, but how do I actually do this? How do I shift from identifying with my thoughts to being the observer of my thoughts? This is where the practice comes in, because this isn't something you can understand purely intellectually. You have to experience it directly. The most powerful tool for discovering that you are not your thoughts is meditation, but not the kind of meditation where you're trying to empty your mind or achieve some blissed-out state. I'm talking about simple awareness meditation, where you sit quietly and practice observing your thoughts without getting caught up in them. You might focus on your breath as an anchor, and then when thoughts arise, which they will constantly, you simply notice them. There's a thought about work. There's a worried thought about tomorrow. There's a memory from yesterday. You don't judge the thoughts as good or bad. You don't try to push them away. You don't follow them down the rabbit hole of rumination. You just notice them, like you might notice cars passing by on a street. You observe them arising, existing for a moment, and then dissolving back into silence. At first, this practice might seem impossible. You might sit down to meditate and immediately get completely lost in thought for 10 minutes before you suddenly remember, oh, I was supposed to be observing my thoughts. That's completely normal. That's part of the process. The practice isn't about being perfect at observing. It's about those moments of remembering, those moments when you suddenly realize, I've been lost in thought, but now I'm aware again. That moment of recognition, that's the space of awareness I'm talking about. That's the real you noticing that you had been identified with thinking. Every time you have that moment of waking up from being lost in thought, you're strengthening your ability to disidentify from your thoughts. You're training yourself to recognize the difference between awareness and the contents of awareness. And here's something beautiful that happens when you practice this regularly. You start to notice that there are gaps between thoughts. This is profound, so I want you to really take this in. Most people believe they think continuously, that there's never a moment when thinking isn't happening, but that's not actually true. If you observe your mind carefully, you'll notice that thoughts are actually discrete events that arise and pass away. And between thoughts there is space. There is silence. There is pure awareness without any mental content. These gaps might be very brief at first, maybe just a fraction of a second, but they're there. And in those gaps, there is no anxiety. How could there be? Anxiety requires thought. It requires mental narration, prediction, judgment, interpretation. In the space between thoughts, there's just peaceful awareness. As you practice meditation and become more familiar with your own mind, these gaps tend to get longer and more noticeable. You start to recognize that this spacious awareness isn't something you need to create or achieve. It's always been there. It's what you fundamentally are. But meditation isn't the only way to practice this. You can bring this quality of observation into your daily life. When you notice anxiety arising, you can pause and ask yourself, who is noticing this anxiety? Not in a philosophical way, but as a genuine inquiry. When you feel your heart racing and your mind spinning with worried thoughts, there's something aware of that entire experience. What is that something? Can you find it? Can you locate the observer? If you look for the observer, you won't find an object, you won't find a thing. Because awareness isn't an object. It's the subject. It's the seeing, not the seen. It's the knowing, not the known. This might sound abstract, but if you actually do this practice in a moment of anxiety, something shifts. Suddenly you're not completely consumed by the anxiety. There's a part of you, the deepest part, that's simply witnessing it all with a kind of neutral, compassionate presence. Let's talk about what happens when you really embody this understanding in relation to anxious thoughts, specifically. Imagine you're lying in bed at night and a thought pops up. What if I get fired tomorrow? If you're completely identified with your thoughts, that thought will immediately trigger a whole cascade of additional thoughts and emotions. I can't get fired, I'll lose my apartment, I won't be able to pay my bills, everyone will think I'm a failure, I'll never recover from this, why am I so incompetent? Your body will tense up, your heart rate will increase, stress hormones will flood your system, and you'll lie there for hours unable to sleep, playing out disaster scenarios in your mind. But if you've cultivated the ability to observe your thoughts without being your thoughts, something different happens. The thought, what if I get fired tomorrow, arises, and there's a spacious awareness that notices, oh, there's an anxious thought about getting fired. That's it. Just a simple acknowledgement. You don't need to engage with the content of the thought. You don't need to argue with it, or try to replace it with a positive thought. You don't need to analyze why you're having that thought or what it means about you. You just notice it, like you might notice a bird flying by. The thought is allowed to be there, but it doesn't pull you into its story. It doesn't have the power to generate that whole catastrophic cascade. It arises, it's noticed, and then it naturally dissolves. This brings me to an important point about acceptance. When I say you should observe your thoughts and not engage with them, some people hear that as suppression or avoidance. Oh, so I should just ignore my anxiety and pretend it's not there. No, that's actually the opposite of what I'm saying. True observation is total acceptance. When you're genuinely observing your anxiety from the position of awareness, you're not pushing it away or trying to make it disappear. You're allowing it to be exactly as it is. You're saying, yes, anxiety is present right now. Yes, there are worried thoughts. Yes, there are uncomfortable sensations in my body. All of this is allowed to be here. This is radically different from the usual relationship we have with anxiety, which is one of resistance. Usually when anxiety shows up, we immediately go into battle mode. No, I can't feel anxious right now. I have things to do. I need to get rid of this feeling. Why is this happening again? I should be over this by now. What's wrong with me? All of that resistance, all of that fighting against what is, actually makes the anxiety worse. It's like struggling in quicksand. The more you fight, the deeper you sink. There's a famous saying in psychology, what you resist persists. This is absolutely true with anxiety. When you try to push anxiety away, when you try to control it or suppress it or avoid it, you actually give it more power. You make it into this huge monster that you have to constantly defend yourself against. But when you allow anxiety to be present, when you stop resisting it, something paradoxical happens. It loses its power. Not necessarily immediately, not like some magic trick where it instantly disappears, but gradually over time as you practice allowing rather than resisting. You'll notice that anxiety doesn't feel as overwhelming. It doesn't seem as catastrophic. It becomes just another sensation, just another thought, just another weather pattern moving through the sky of your awareness. There's a practice that can help with this, and it might sound counterintuitive. When you feel anxiety, instead of trying to get away from it, you can actually turn toward it. You can get curious about it. What does this anxiety actually feel like in my body? Where do I feel it most strongly? Is it moving or still? Is it hot or cold? What color would it be if it had a color? By investigating your anxiety with genuine curiosity, rather than fear and resistance, you shift your relationship to it. You stop being the victim of anxiety and become the observer of anxiety. You stop being in the experience and start being with the experience. This subtle shift makes all the difference. Here's something else that's important to understand. Your thoughts are not facts. This seems obvious when I say it like this, but in practice, most people treat their thoughts as if they were unquestionable truths. Your mind tells you, everyone at work thinks I'm incompetent, and you believe it without evidence. Your mind tells you, this anxiety is going to last forever, and you accept it as prophecy. But thoughts are just mental events. They're not reality itself. They're interpretations, predictions, memories, judgments, stories that your mind creates. Your mind is not trying to give you an objective view of reality. It's trying to keep you safe. And for the mind, keeping you safe often means assuming the worst, preparing for danger, being hypervigilant about potential threats. This is why anxiety-prone minds generate so many catastrophic thoughts. When you realize that your thoughts are not facts, you can start to question them gently. When the thought "I'm going to fail" arises, you can ask, is that actually true? Do I know for certain that I'm going to fail? What evidence supports this thought? What evidence contradicts it? This kind of gentle inquiry helps you see that your thoughts are just thoughts, not commandments, not accurate predictions about the future, not definitive statements about your worth. There's also something liberating about recognizing that you don't have to wait for your thoughts to change or your anxiety to disappear before you can live your life. This is where so many people get stuck. They think, once I'm not anxious anymore, then I'll apply for that job, then I'll go on that date, then I'll travel, then I'll pursue my dreams. But this is giving all your power to anxiety. When you realize you are not your anxiety, you can make a different choice. You can feel anxious and still take action. You can notice worried thoughts and still move forward. Think about this. Every time you've ever done something meaningful in your life, chances are there was some level of anxiety present, but you did it anyway. You felt the fear and acted anyway. Bravery isn't the absence of fear or anxiety. It's the willingness to act in the presence of fear and anxiety. Let's talk about the body, because anxiety is fundamentally a physical experience. Your body has an autonomic nervous system with two main branches. The sympathetic nervous system, which creates the fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which creates rest and digest. When you perceive a threat, whether it's real or just a worried thought, your sympathetic nervous system activates. This creates all those uncomfortable sensations: racing heart, rapid breathing, muscle tension, sweating. The problem is that your body can't tell the difference between a real threat and an imagined one. Your mind thinks, what if I embarrass myself tomorrow? And your body responds as if there's a lion attacking you. Here's what most people do: they panic about the panic. They feel their heart racing and think, oh no, something's really wrong, I need to make this stop right now. This activates the sympathetic nervous system even more. But when you understand that you are not these sensations, you can respond differently. You can notice my heart is racing without making it mean something terrible. You can recognize my sympathetic nervous system is activated. This is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. This will pass. You can also work directly with your body through breath. When you're anxious, your breathing becomes rapid and shallow, which signals danger to your brain, which increases anxiety. But you can break this cycle by deliberately slowing your breath. Try this. Breathe in through your nose for 4 counts, hold for 4, then breathe out through your mouth for 6 or 8. Do this several times. This activates the vagus nerve and tells your body, you're safe, you can relax. The beautiful thing about breath is that it's always available to you. All of these practices, meditation, breathwork, gentle inquiry, are tools that can help, but they're not the escape from anxiety in themselves. The escape from anxiety is the fundamental shift in perspective. It's the recognition that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your sensations, but the aware presence that witnesses all of these things. When you really get this, not just intellectually but experientially, everything changes. You can have anxious thoughts without being an anxious person. You can feel anxiety in your body without your identity being defined by anxiety. This doesn't mean you become emotionless. You're still a human being with a full range of experiences. But there's a profound difference between experiencing anxiety and being anxiety. When you experience anxiety, it's like weather passing through the sky. When you are anxiety, it's like you've convinced yourself that you are the storm that's suffering, so who are you really? If you're not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your sensations, then what are you? You are awareness itself. You are the conscious presence that makes all experience possible. You are the space in which life unfolds. And this awareness is always peaceful, always free, always okay, regardless of what's happening. Hey, try this. Stop for a moment and notice that you are aware. Don't think about it, just notice it directly. There is awareness happening right now. This awareness is not produced by thinking. Thinking happens in awareness. Can you notice that awareness itself has no problems? Whatever problems you think you have exist in the realm of thought. But the awareness noticing all of this is pristine, unaffected, at peace. The beautiful paradox is that when you stop trying to get rid of anxiety and instead learn to be the space in which anxiety is allowed to exist, anxiety often naturally diminishes. This is because so much of anxiety's power comes from resistance. When you stop resisting, the whole structure begins to loosen. And even when anxiety is present, it doesn't have the same crushing weight because you know it's not you. I want to leave you with an invitation. For the next week, practice observing your thoughts. When you catch yourself identified with a thought, ask, who is aware of this thought? Make space for anxiety instead of trying to eliminate it. When you feel anxious, try saying anxiety is present instead of I am anxious. Practice breathing slowly throughout your day. And be patient with yourself. You're simply learning to recognize what you've always been, the aware, peaceful presence that is watching these words right now. The consciousness that has been with you your entire life unchanged, by all the changes, always here, always now, always home. That's who you really are. You are the vast, open awareness in which all experiences come and go like clouds in an infinite sky.